Warning, F-bombs are armed and might be dropped. There is a continuing idea that the Second Amendment has something to do with hunting or sport shooting or collecting or standing up to a tyrannical government. Well, yes and no. All right. The first purpose of the Second Amendment is the 11 November 1778 Cherry Valley Massacre, which left 55 dead and 30 held for ransom. The surrender of Cornwallis was in October of 1781. That's almost 3 years after the Cherry Valley Massacre. In fact, the war, the Revolutionary War, is only about halfway over at this point. Here's the story. First of all, through the Revolution, there were several Indian groups, and some of them were allied with Washington, and some of them were allied with the British. Now, that's a decision they all had to make on their own. Seneca sided with Washington and brought him aid at Valley Forge, whereas one particular tribe took it upon themselves to march into Cherry Valley, massacre the fort, and take literally everybody hostage at first. That was 70 people. Now, for reasons of their own, they turned about 40 of them loose, but the other 30 they kept for ransom. Even with defenders in place, this relatively small tribe was able to take control of the entire village. That was something that weighed very heavily on the founders' minds. They knew that this was something that could happen again in the future. Now, that's not the only incident. As a matter of fact, Alexander Hamilton's own home, or more precisely his father-in-law's home, was burned to the ground about a year before this, I think it was. It was either a year before or a year after. Meanwhile, Alexander Hamilton, at this point, is marching south with Washington after having held the British at Brooklyn Heights for a week, I think it was. I'm sorry, I have the book in the other room. I could look it up. The point is, the founders understood you can't put a cop on every corner, and even if you did, it might not do any good. You had to have the means to defend yourself at the end of the day. They also understood that sometimes defending yourself isn't going to do you any good. You're not going to survive. But you might take whoever it is with you. Or you might hurt him, force him to go seek help, and then the sheriff back then and the police now will come looking and asking who came looking for help. That's how they found John Wilkes Booth. All right, they knew he'd injured himself when he jumped off the balcony. So the first thing they did was go around to all the doctors and ask, did anybody come and see you last night, night before, whatever it was? And sure enough, Samuel Mudd said, well, yes, I had a gentleman come in with a broken leg. We got you, and now we got him. And that's an unfortunate fact of the truth of the world. Even under mandatory carry, you may not necessarily survive. But you may give that bad guy such a hard time that he either changes his mind, which is obviously preferable, and runs away. He's forced to change his mind because he's bleeding out. And if nothing else, you might buy somebody else 2 more seconds to escape or to shoot back or something else. I want to talk about the tyrannical government argument just very briefly. The first purpose of the Second Amendment was to permit the people to meet unlawful force with like force. Yes, it has happened in U.S. history that unlawful force came from government powers. All right. There's the McMahon County War, also known as the Battle of Athens, in which the sheriff of the county tried to rig an election to protect his boss. I forget the man's name, but his nickname was Kingfisher. And he has, Huey Long. Tried to protect Huey Long, and more precisely, Huey Long's subordinates. That was the real deal. He was protecting Huey Long's subordinates by making sure they stayed in office. They were supposed to turn around and protect him, and they couldn't because something like 250 World War II veterans, all of them armed with M1 and M2s, had surrounded the jail, and he was forced to surrender and flee for his life. The sheriff, that is. And in so doing, released the ballots that he was supposed to alter. Would have worked if nobody had known he'd taken the ballots to the jail, which was what got everybody's attention. There are other cases. I'll straight up say Bundy Ranch was one of them. The incident in Oregon was very, very much a borderline case. If it didn't cross the line entirely, it was a borderline case. I leave the courts to finally figure that story out completely. So yeah, occasionally it has happened. I know I've only cited 3 examples, and if I brought the rest of my notes today, I could have actually cited 5. Please do not cite Waco or Ruby Ridge. We are not interested in wild conspiracy theories here. All right? There's a couple other actually legitimate examples. One is from World War II. Actually, 2 of them are from World War II. One of them is the internment of Japanese. And I forgot the other one, but it involved 1 man and 1 prison cell, basically. And another one from Plains War. And it was not what we did to the Indians. It's actually a case of white on white, and more precisely, extra legal government on not really great and awesome people. And if you think I'm talking about OK Corral, no. OK Corral is... I leave that case alone for the time being. The first purpose of the Second Amendment is to permit the people to meet unlawful force. What was Andy wearing with like force? Keep calm. Mandatory carry on.